Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Ushma Tyagi and I shall be your host today. Welcome to the Dell Healthcare and Pharmaceuticals webinar organized by Strategy. Over the next 1 hour or so, you can expect to view and absorb the latest healthcare and pharma sector trends that are driving adoption of technology. With those words, I would like to invite Mr. Arjun Vishwanathan, Chief Research Officer, Strategy Solutions, to set the context for the webinar. Over to you, Arjun.
Hello and good morning. I'm Arjun Vishwanathan, and today we are at the beginning of what promises to be a very, very interesting event around the inflection and the convergence of technology and human capital in the healthcare and pharma sectors in India. As I proceed to set the context and deliver the keynote, it is very imperative to understand that as technology takes its rightful center stage along with human capital, vastly different set of realities, the pillars of revival and resurgence, all eyes are on business leaders for a change in mindsets, such that will usher in a new age of encouragement of innovation and new business models, incorporating digitization of assets. In that context, the world as we know it has changed, and data is transforming healthcare and pharma as never before. Let's take a look at how data is transforming healthcare and pharma as sectors. These are data points synthesized and such that are publicly available. And while I'm not going to read through each of these, I think it should suffice to mention and say that the point number 4 that we've mentioned here, I beg your pardon, point number 5, is that 95% of businesses cite the need to manage unstructured data as a problem in their business strategy. Now, really, ladies and gentlemen, what does this point to? It points to what is clearly the new vocabulary of digital thought in the pharma and healthcare sectors. In this role of the role of technology is increasingly becoming very, very pivotal, especially in industries that are at the center of mankind's renewed hope and optimism to the largest degree. Thus, the future of healthcare and pharma by themselves have never been more eagerly watched or earnestly watched, as events in the recent past have shown us, not just in India, but across the globe, because technology has already changed much of how healthcare and medication is being innovated upon and subsequently administered. Recent technology-led advancements have provided the entire health ecosystem unparalleled access to information. Such data is also enabling more convenience to both patients and healthcare providers and drug researchers and manufacturers to accelerate health and well-being, which is why the whole traditional concepts and strategies and mindsets of health and pharma as sectors have gone through an unprecedented change. Because as I come to my concluding slide, where we as analysts at Strategy Insights are increasingly realizing and recognizing the fact that the acceleration that is imperative today, that is critical today, will need digital mindsets and very different views and reorientations of digital processes. Because as this diagram is clearly showing us, is that whether it is virtual consultations in healthcare, patient and clinical care automation, the use of robotics in advanced invasive surgery, integrated medical records, infection control or medication use and impact, technology has transformed almost all aspects of health and well-being. To succeed, therefore, in this new digital landscape, healthcare and pharma companies must accelerate the use of technology, especially around data and innovation, while leveraging the whole concepts of human capital at one end and technology at the other end to bring in what is clearly called seamless digital convergence, which is essentially the collision of the physical and the digital towards a hybrid future. So there, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to end my context setting and keynote. You were with Arjun Vishwanathan. I'm the Chief Research Officer at Strategy Inc. Please stay tuned. We have a fascinating event ahead with industry leaders and subject matter experts holding forth on the whole concepts of healthcare and pharma from the lens of technology. Stay tuned. Thank you, and we'll be back in just a second.
Thank you, Arjun, for an overview of today's webinar theme. Ladies and gentlemen, our next session is a panel discussion with four senior executives, CXOs from the Indian healthcare and pharmaceutical sectors. This panel will see the invited industry leaders share their insights with respect to adoption of technology in the healthcare and pharma sectors to adapt to the changing realities post-pandemic. The panel will be led by Mr. Arjun Vishwanathan, Chief Research Officer, Strategic Solutions. Over to you, Mr. Vishwanathan.
Hello and welcome back. I'm Arjun Vishwanathan, and today I'm going to be in dialogue with very eminent IT leaders from the healthcare and the pharma sectors. As technology takes its rightful center stage along with human capital in a vastly different set of realities, the pillars really of revival and resurgence, all eyes are on business leaders for a change in mindsets, such that will usher in a new age of encouragement of innovation and new business models incorporating digitization of assets. In this, the role of technology has already been established beyond measure and belief. But what's increasingly going to be very critical is how organizations approach the whole concept of data and insights to power better healthcare, better drug discovery, better drug delivery, and perhaps affordable healthcare to the larger nation. In this, equally, the data, if it were to be segmented between structured and unstructured, both of them have immense possibilities in being able to revolutionize the whole concept of healthcare and pharmaceuticals. Without further ado, please put your hands together in welcoming my panelists for today, and in no specific order, Arvind Sivaramakrishnan, CHCIO, Apollo Hospitals. Arvind, delighted you could be with us today.
Pleasure, Arjun. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Unmesh Deshpande, Chief Technology Officer, Kingsway Hospitals. Unmesh, pleasure you could join us, sir. Thank you.
My pleasure as well. Thank you.
Anjani Kumar, CIO, Strides Pharma. Anjali, privileged that you could be with us today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me here.
And last but certainly not the least, Dr. Shyam Vasudev Rao, founder, Forus Health and Renalix Health Systems. Dr. Rao, welcome. We are extremely privileged that you could join us today.
It's my pleasure, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. So if I could directly jump into it, and Unmesh, beg your pardon. Unmesh, with your permission, if I could kind of come to you.
Okay.
Unmesh, now, if the last 7 months of the year, well, they've been quite challenging and complex by themselves, were to be a lesson that we have learned, and perhaps a catalyst for leveraging and enhancing the role of technology in healthcare as well as pharma, how, in your view, are organizations today in the healthcare segment, specifically from your point of view, approaching the whole concept of data to accelerate that progress and the transformation in healthcare providers? Unmesh Deshpande.
Yeah, that's a very nice question. And all of us were taken by a surprise. This surprise was a bad surprise. Everybody was expecting that everybody will go on back foot and start wondering what to do. But fortunately, for people from IT who are driving the healthcare, were very well geared about it. They had the resources, means, and the structured data in their pockets to really play on. So finding out what patients are coming to your facility, what patients are able to come to your facility, and which patients are already connected on some kind of a communication media was very important. Those data and analytics were available with most of the leading hospitals in the country today. That has really leveraged healthcare to reach the patient rather than patient reaching the healthcare. So this digital transformation has really bridged this gap because of having correct data, right data at perfect time. So
Very interesting, very powerfully put, because Dr. Rao, I'm going to bring that to you. The whole fundamental concepts of data seem to have been established to the largest degree. But the acceleration of the use of data, fundamentally from the point of view of even figuring out which is the right data and which is not, is equally important. What's your view on that, Dr. Rao?
I think this has been a very important issue because what we talk about preventive care and also what we are talking about non-communicable diseases, and that has actually really shown people now how important it is to manage their NCDs in a better way. And now, if you're talking about managing the non-communicable disease like diabetes, hypertension, or COPD, which is the biggest issue now in the COVID days, the whole thing is about the continuum. And it is not like one time I go and get it fixed. So the data plays a very, very important role now. That is the EMR. For decades and decades, we have been trying to advocate this and tell people that the EMR is very important. Everybody should have their data handy. Only then, it is possible to manage their healthcare. And we are shifting the paradigm from a curative part of healthcare to preventive part. So the curative part is something, we can depend on the hospitals and the medical fraternity. But preventive part is an individual's responsibility. And that is where it makes this data all the more important.
Very
And
true.
that
Very
is
good.
what we have seen now during the pandemic, getting a lot of attention. And going forward, I'm sure, this is going to make a big change in each and
Indeed.
everybody's life.
Indeed.
Like I
Indeed.
have my bank account, I need to have my PHR. So that is the thing.
Absolutely.
Like,
Couldn't have put that better, because Arvind, I'm going to bring that to you. That smile on your face. I have to bring this to you. Arvind, you've been a proponent of the digitization at Apollo hospitals. You've been at the forefront of it. And in recent conversations also, you've made significant progress. But if this unfortunate last 7 months have really proven to be a catalyst, how has, in your view, orientation of mindsets changed towards the use of data, towards exactly what Dr. Rao said, digitization of assets, EMR, better healthcare? Arvind Sivaramakrishnan.
All these solutions have been with us for the longest time. And so far, all of these were seen as innovation, thought leadership, and all of that. Not sure if it's going to be tasteful if I say this, but I think the pandemic has become something like a demonetization of technology in healthcare. So I'm not a politician. I don't intend to be one. And the impact of demonetization, at least, was to get people to the convenience of digital payments. And until then, what was considered impossible, not my style of working, I've been used to this, why don't you just leave me with what I'm doing, nothing is bothering me. That was one sector that was dealing with it, and I think the very same thing is happening here. Dr. Sham nicely put it in terms of the importance and the cross correlation of information that causes the care continuum, that makes people understand the relevance. It's not just go in, fix it, and come. And unfortunately, this is not a repair shop where you just go. It's a one-time activity. Yes, there are a few health-related issues that are just one time, and once done, you can forget about it. But unfortunately, predominant part of it don't fall in that category. And it is just not about it's just not about some disease. It's about that continuum, the before, the during, the after, and the impact that it has to those who are taking care of you around you, your immediate social sector who are worried, your place of work who are worried about you. And all of these are layers and layers of data who need to be informed appropriately. Obviously, I'm just going to say it, privacy, security, we don't need to get into a big sting argument on that. Yes, it is there. It's something personal. And what I need to tell you, and depending on who you are and in what context you're asking, needs to be filtered. That kept apart, the importance of it, and thereby what it can do to various forms of scientific evidence-based medicine that can be put in. And again, India is a beautiful example where this combination of allopathic and all the Ayush treatment methods, evidence-based, scientific, including inhalation, steam inhalation, and all of that, evidence-based, scientific. When you look at all of them coming together, this is the powerful data element, and this data element has to be logically captured. Want to call it EMR, PHR? Yes, those are the modalities of it. I think that is what brings the relevance of it, and I think the pandemic is bringing that hard trust. So it's no more innovation. It's
Very powerfully put. Very powerfully put, Arvind. Thank you. Because Anjani, I'm going to come to you. You heard a myriad of spectrum of views. In your view, you're at the center. I mean, hands and elbows deep in the whole concept of the pharma sector. One that not just the nation but the entire globe is looking up to for a solution from the human travels that we currently have. In your view, how important is data discovery, data acquisition, and data leveraging towards transforming healthcare as well as the pharma sector? Let's talk about India for now. Anjani Kumar.
See, Arjun, good question. And take healthcare or pharma. Actually, center of it is human health and patient, right? And that's where Arvind or me or Unmesh, all of us is working towards one goal, right? Coming back to what has happened due to pandemic, I agree with Arvind, and in a different way, I just call it pandemic is being used in every forum just like digital used to be. This is new digital word, right? And most of the technology, I mean, nothing has been invented in pandemic if you look at it. It's just that new technology has not been invented. How do you use that whole change, the way you use it, that has changed, correct? So let's go back to pharma, right? You asked about pharma. Of course, pharma, if you look at it, we have not been in India aspect, we have not been in very much in innovative medicine. We have been in generic medicine where we file ANDAs for which patents have expired. We do have few innovative medicine, but numbers are very less. So it would be unfair to just include India, and since this is a global pandemic, I would just talk about R&D, right? What has happened? Biggest users of data, right? And I don't know how many of you have seen, sorry, the Sanofi CEO saying, we are a digital company, right? So whole any medicine or any vaccine, if you look historically, it has taken from 6 years to 12 years. Why 6 years to 12 years? There are processes. So three major processes. One is the discovery of the molecule itself. Second one is the finding efficacy. And third one is safety. That whole 12 years, what used to be taken, now we are talking in 1 year, right? How is it possible? So first part, discovery itself. Discovery used to take long time. And again, there is a lot of data. And companies have been working on this for quite some time. What happened in this case, people said, if I go for fresh discovery, it will take a lot of time. Do I have few arrows in my quiver already, which can be repurposed, right? And then again, data help them first. The second one is efficacy. How does data help in efficacy? First thing is, how do you find out who are the right patients, correct? So finding out in clinical trials, finding out the target audience itself, this helps you. And then once you get the data, typically it will take you phase 3 trial, you are talking of 40,000 and above phase 3 trials patients, will take you 1 to 2 years typically. We are talking in 1 to 3 months with the data. That was on and the third part is safety. You put vaccine to somebody and then you wait for years to observe it. Now you could extrapolate the data using certain health parameters like how it is reacting, correct? You could do predictive analytics, and that is helping. And that's not only companies are using, even the regulators are using data to that extent. You will be surprised to what extent FDA is using the data analytics, machine learning. We had certain calls with FDA, or we have heard FDA in certain forums, industry forum, and we were pleasantly surprised the way they are much ahead than many people will think. So that's where I think the pharma industry biggest impact and biggest uses of change of users, what you see, I would say it is pharma industry for sure.
Actually, very true what you just said, Anjani, because, see, Unmesh, I'm going to come to you really. We've fairly established the fact that data is really indeed a digital asset that can be leveraged to unparalleled proportions. But Unmesh, my question to you really is, there's tons of data that is unstructured and lying out there that we perhaps don't even know about. My question to you is, what is it going to take Indian organizations, especially from the healthcare and the pharma sector, to start looking at that and perhaps set the example for other industries to follow?
See, as you rightly said, data is available in large quantity, and it is very difficult to consume entire data for benefit of healthcare and keeping patient as a focus of the operations. So what we are also trying to do is to granularize that data, make it into small data sets, then attach and design some kind of widgets to give a meaningful insights into the data. All these insights put together will definitely form a robust decision support system on the operation sides and clinical decision support system on clinical side. When both these are aligned together, it makes a cutting edge kind of a medical facility which people can benefit out of it. Now, having leveraged on data, reinvention of wheel is not required. All things are already there. As it was rightly said, that there is no invention happened in past 8 or 10 months. It is only innovation which is leveraging organizations to have a better customer focus, patient focus, and healthcare, which is resulting into better and more deeply reached healthcare system within the country. So granularization and segmentation of data put together with widgets and uh, formation of decision support system as far as management of healthcare and clinical decision support system as far as management of clinical aspect of the healthcare. If it is streamlined properly on available data, I think it will be a winning edge for all the healthcare professionals.
Fascinating, fascinating. Because Dr. Rao, I'm going to come to you. In your very vantage role, how do you kind of make the differentiation between what you see and therefore what you know? But equally importantly, what you don't see and perhaps what you don't know, that could be much more than what you have in your hands.
Yes, see, the association of data, which is not just the data what we get from a point of view of just a particular healthcare problem or something. Like, for example, the AMR system linked with Aadhaar, say, is giving you a entry into a bigger opportunity. Now, for example, we were looking at, I've been working with the dialysis, new ways of delivering dialysis, and we are looking at things like the hub and spoke model in dialysis. We are looking at moving dialysis from a institutional base to home base. That's the thing which even Trump has recently come up with a policy, because institutional overheads are very high. So now, is there a way by which I can put the dialysis machines on a wheels and take it to the garage, at the doorstep of people, and deliver dialysis at their place? So now I have the information. I know which geographical location they belong to, and I know what is the time it takes to reach there, and who is the next person. And if there is a way by which this data I take, and then we start forming this sort of a network, we are in a position to deliver care at a much more lesser cost for the individual and at their convenience, and also get a little bit more premium for these things. So that way, you can.
I'm just going to hold you there, Dr. Rao, because I'm going to bring that to Mr. Sivaramakrishnan. Arvind, last time that we spoke about 4 months back, you spoke precisely about this, where you said increasingly from institutional care, we would like to move to preventive care.
Yes.
Now, when it comes to
Home
that,
care.
it is, of course, one of the most noblest of thoughts. But how, in your opinion and in your guidance to this wonderful audience that's kind of tuning in and listening in to us today, are you going to leverage data that you perhaps don't know about, but still foray into that kind of a reality of the future? Arvind.
It's not about data that you don't know of. See, that's where I think what's going on, if we have to learn from the past. We've heard enough of data is oil and all of that, but now let's look at that. Are we opportunistically exploiting the data, or are we strategically exploring the data? If
Interesting.
you're going to be opportunistic, there are good and bad flavors of it, and there's going to be quicker cycles of good and bad times. And just that we've learned the lesson that it's not going to hold on for long. And if you're going to strategically explore it, then automatically you will start looking at finding answers to problem statements from various patterns of it. So this is where goes your question on the data that we don't know. Yes, it is data that we don't know. So let's take examples. You've got cardiovascular diseases, which is very prone to the Indian subcontinent of people. So you start looking at our patterns. You start looking at our patterns in terms of our body structural alignment, our diet habit, our exercising habit, our general work habits as it deals with various sectors of people. You bring all of that together, and then you start looking at other more clinically advanced data, the genomic type of conversations, their complete lab and radiological studies, in which we can start looking at patterns that happened across, just not an individual data point, but patterns that happen across a reasonable event of time, and correlate that to their corresponding, genetically linked people. And now you're looking at that data that is not there. And yes, when we start, you are going to go into a particular, analysis and correlation of information, and you're going to get to a dead end or a frustrating point where some amount of data is absent, because you've gone there and the data is absent, or because of the past bad discipline in collection of the data, that data is giving you misproportionate results. So I think that's where you're going to start having transactional discipline put in place, where going forward we can do it. So you just can't say, okay, I looked at the data, the capture rate is not great. Fine, we can get upset about it, but how are we going to fix it for the future? Can we look at those? Can we get early results? Get people to be encouraged by the early result in a very organized manner that does significant change management to their work process. See, this is just not about data and preaching about data and making it some
application in a real life.
Fix your work process, because that's where the collection happens at every point of service in this combined realm of healthcare delivery, whether it's the life sciences or the pharma or the provider side of it, this combined realm of it. Fix those data points so that we can do it, and from the old one, extrapolate the data. And we are defining the problem statement better. This is not about, can you predict cardiovascular disease? That's a very 500,000 feet high question. I wish we could all do that. But if we can start bringing it lower, ultimately to that goal of predicting, or diabetes, or COPD, as rightly mentioned, that's another very serious problem with a lot of places dealing with pollution and related, environmental issues. So you start looking at it, but start having meaningful definitions. Maybe now you start looking at its impact in a certain age group population segment, much smaller, and then start diversifying. Yes, we will find meaning in the data of the past, no matter how badly collected it was, at all. Again, I'm just giving the immediate pessimistic view of all the data collected is bad, which is a very typical conclusion that we all jump to. Even in that case, I think we approach it in the structured manner. We have a lot of way to go.
That's very powerfully put. Because Anjali, I'm going to come to you in a different fashion of sorts. Really, is I think the last set of conversations that we've had have fairly established the fact that organizations today are looking at data in a very differential manner. Anjali, in the last 7 months, really, how have you seen organizational leadership change their orientation and mindsets towards technology, the convergence of technology at one end, human capital at the other, and data and insights, if you were to look at it in a triangular fashion or a pyramid of sorts? How have you seen the convergence of these three elements kind of come together from a leadership orientation change perspective? Anjani.
Interesting question. Since you asked about how people's perception had changed of the technology during this, I'll go back to Unmesh's first point, which I don't agree at all, that we were ready. Not at all. None of the CIO will tell you when you talk offline that we were ready, right? Nobody was ready, correct? When it came, but as an IT, you have handled so many situations which you were not ready for. That had made you ready to handle this situation. And that's where most of the organization, which I mean, if you think of us or many of the manufacturing organization never thought that they will work remotely, right? Or they have the capability of working remotely. In 1 week, people were able to do. And that has created, I mean, one is remote working, two is how do you enable the collaboration. That has created a lot of trust, correct? Third point, which is most of the systems were managed by the IT department remotely. That was another point. So I would definitely say people's perception in the organization had changed drastically about IT. They do trust IT more than they used to trust before pandemic. Good side of pandemic, right?
Significantly so.
Yeah. The second part, coming to data. I mean, I agree with Arvind. You know, it is not about data was sitting we did not know about data. If you go even 15 years back, there were a smarter business leader. They used to use data very smartly, but there were very few of them. Now we are talking of data. So I will keep the whole data part into two parts. One is internal data, two is external data. So internal data, when you have, now we are talking of data democratization, data layer, that you will get the data, whatever you are authorized to, in a way you want to get in. And we will, from the IT or digital perspective, we will give you a platform which will enable you to get insight out of it. Not only insight, most better companies are telling what is the next best action based on your data insight, correct? So this is what we are talking of the change. And this is, again, I would say nothing to do with, I mean, a little bit might be pandemic. This was happening and this is again happening.
Mostly evolutionary journey by itself.
Correct.
Because I want to take precisely that, Anjani, sorry, Anjani, please continue.
Second one, which is external factor, that is very important. And there is an acceleration due to pandemic. One of the continuous data learning, federated data learning platform, which is created, it is by a consortium of industry. I don't know how many of you know. This is called Melody. Merck, Novartis, Johnson & Johnson's company, Jenison, AWS, NVIDIA, a lot of them are, part of it. Recently, they had, I think, first milestone achieved. And so what is happening is industry is recognizing alone on my own, I might not be able to go. Why don't we do a federation? Many other industry have done in the past. Now pharma is doing. And if you ask me, I am very excited and very positive about it. And that's the way for most of the other industry.
Very, very powerfully put. Because Unmesh, I want to come to you. See, the whole concept of the establishment of technology, which Anjani was kind of holding forth on, is fairly there. In your view and in your essential guidance to this audience that's listening in and tuning in to us today, how would you ask them to approach the whole concept of leveraging technology at its very base, with the layers of data, both structured as well as unstructured, to accelerate the rate of innovation that is so, so important in the times and the days that we live in today?
Yeah, That's a very nice question. What I feel is whatever is the routine regular task you need to automate, and you have to focus on the new challenges what you are getting. Like there are technologies available for RPAs. So deploy as many RPAs as possible so that you don't have to worry about the repeatability of the process. I mean, there are certain processes in healthcare industries which are absolutely repeated. I mean, you don't have to think twice before running that process. So these are routine processes which can be automated. So once you have done this, you have taken major workload out of your shoulders, and your shoulders can take a thinking hat to really think upon what best use of available data, information that you can put to use for betterment of services. So that is one thing. Secondly, you could automate a lot of processes, not in terms of actually software as such, but the equipment interface also. Now, what we've done is take a simple example of a nurse going to a patient's room to take vitals on a periodic basis. In Kingsway, we have automated that. So all the vitals are automatically being sensed, monitored, and sent to a centralized portal where a graphical representation is happening. So a physician, clinician on a round has the trend analysis of the patient before seeing it. What kind of oxygen level patient has, what kind of a pulse rate is happening. So all these things they are automating, and this is nothing but an analytics driven on the data which is captured.
So very true. So very true.
This data which was captured earlier was meaningless. Now suddenly it has become more important because these are the parameters and the basics which are driving the main decisions as far as healthcare is concerned.
Very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. But I do have a view on the clock, and I do have time for very, very important questions. Dr. Rao, I'm going to come to you. With the knowledge that you have, with the experience that we've gleaned over the last 7 months, and with our supreme belief that technology will be the enabler, in your opinion, Dr. Rao, how will data, structured as well as unstructured, and where will it create or help organizations, especially in the healthcare and the pharma sector, create the most innovation and invention in the months and the years to come? In India specifically.
Yeah.
Dr. Rao.
I think this will be a very big game changer. This is enabling people now to seek healthcare where they are, when, you say, when and where they need, because people have stopped to think about going to the hospital. Now they feel scared. So in the process, they are now looking at various avenues. One of the big things I see is that, chemotherapy, which is it's actually not a very safe thing. Even in hospital, you need a lot of monitoring, but now you see it's inevitable. So now all of a sudden, there is a big one for chemo at home. So there are organizations now going and delivering chemo. I'm sure Arvind will agree that, now instead of they coming to the hospital, they are people of a very high risk actually. And if they contract COVID, it's a huge problem. So they are delivered at home. So like that, there are so many things which are happening. And also what I see is we have been working on this I wouldn't say medicine, but tele planning and all that, like the therapy planning was, done, you have all these high-end people, the radiologists, the nuclear physicists, sitting in one place and planning the therapy for the entire chain of hospitals. So that is something which we wanted to build for a long time. I have a faculty position at Dutch University, medical university, and we done something called Mastro Clinic, and we do that there in Holland. But in India, it was impossible to convince. So now you see, people are actually seeing that that is a good thing, because you cannot move people all around the place. Just for this one, they don't have to come every time. So that's where we see that is going to decentralize, but still, certain critical activities get centralized, data becoming more and more useful. We have the EuroCat, like that, we want to start the India Cat program where, all hospitals are contributing to the database, anonymize the data and cancer data particularly. And then, you have this nomic databases where internationally you can start getting all the data and, do the therapy planning and treatment, in a much more effective way and use all the AI and stuff like that. So there is a lot of things happening on that SNOMED databases. So these are some big opportunities which are going to open up now for India as well. Yeah.
Take that, sir, to Arvind. Arvind, the data technology coupled together, where is the inflection and rate of innovation going to be? Is it going to be clinical health? Is it going to be patient care? Is it going to be patient experience? You equally are in the thick of pharma. Is it going to be an accelerated rate of innovation? Where do you think the inflection is going to be that is so important? Arvind.
Arjun, you're asking me a question to choose between my right eye and left eye, and I'm not making. I'm not going to do that. See, look at it this way: that technology is helping us identify that whole aspect of capacity building, and that capacity building is happening through various levels of innovations as it relates to our delivery aspects, like how do we take it home, versus innovation as it relates to capture of information without touch, versus innovation as it relates to understanding and correlating, innovation as it relates to getting a expert in a particular place to have a diverse view into multiple areas simultaneously and physically not be present at them. So you're looking at all of those factors, and also innovation in terms of acceleration of work by kind of eliminating that aspect of waste that was built in due to inertia of the ways in which we used to work. So I think all of those are happening. What is going to be the inflection point? I think very difficult to say, because the pessimist in me starts saying that because we've been faced with this situation, because there was that dire necessity, and I want all of you to keep one data point in mind. What did everybody say? Oh my God, such a big pandemic coming to a country like India. I think people are just going to be falling off and dying on the streets. That was what was expected. That was what was predicted. That was the most logical conclusion everybody drew to. Oh, India doesn't have any healthcare at all. Forget public healthcare. Touchwood, I think our survival rates and our those getting well is becoming so. It's a very high number today. Very, very high number today. Uh, the outcomes are better than most countries that had better public health system than us. So it is creating that innovative model of people, process, and technology. All of it came together in varied combinations. One was taking the other to a different level. One was challenging the other one. And here, what is the focus that we saw, at least as a short-term learning thing? Focus on quality, focus on outcomes, focus on consistency, irrespective of whether it is a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 location of physical availability of infrastructural service and economy. The village is as equally precious as the metro, and vice versa. There's no picking and choosing sides on whether are you going to do it for the rural or the urban. Everybody is a human being, and every life is absolutely precious. It doesn't matter where it is located at. So then you're looking at outcomes that are quality focused. So I see that there is wide respect and understanding for quality, outcomes, and consistency.
Outstandingly.
This is the point of inflection. Again, the jury is wide open there. I would like it to be, but I think people have understood that aspect of capacity building for a planet of 1 billion people, where the resources under any arithmetic are not going to match the demand. has created that virtual capacity. So I think that's what we should look at furthering and celebrating. Have we changed the
Very
dynamics? I'm not sure.
Very powerfully put. Very powerfully put. But I do have a view on the clock. Anjani, I'm going to come to you in conclusion.
Sure.
The coupling of technology and data. Do you think it is going to help India march from accelerating rate of innovation towards the cusp of true invention?
Again, I talked about a little bit. It's a journey. Any industry. If you look at go back to IT industry, right? Initially, there was hardly any product. Most of them were services. Then we went into some products. Now we are at some products. If you look at AI-based product, there are quite a few products. It's just that it has not gotten so much traction. Same thing is coming in pharma, healthcare as well. Initially, we were, on the lower end of the value chain. The innovation is on the much higher side. Innovative medicines are on the much higher side of the value chain. Of course, technology and data will help this a lot, because what has happened is, as we talked about, pandemic has definitely enabled us to use the technology, grasp the technology, and use the data in a better way. Even if you look at pharma, manufacturing, I will talk about very briefly. What are the three parts? First part is you look at, do I have sufficient data? And that is where you start looking at digitization. All the batch record, an analytical worksheet, the logbooks, all of them you are digitizing. Then second thing you look at, I have the data, is it the right data? That's where you change the processes. And third part is harvesting the data, correct? So this is, and I think we are in each phase, but looking at the potential which we have, looking at the people we have, skilled people in the technology, I would say, yeah, it is definitely, we've just like mobile phone, we shifted from no phone to mobile phone by passing landline. Same thing is going to happen out here also.
Fascinating, fascinating, gentlemen. But that, unfortunately, much as I would like to continue this conversation and this very, very interesting dialogue, that's pretty much what we have time for. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Unmesh Deshpande, Dr. Shyam Vasudev Rao, Arvind Sivaramakrishnan, and Anjani Kumar in dialogue with me, your host, Arjun Vishwanathan. Gentlemen, thank you. It has been nothing short of a privilege to have been in dialogue with each of you. Fascinating, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you so much. And for the audience, stay tuned. We'll be back with the next segment in just a moment.
That was truly insightful. Thank you, Mr. Sivaramakrishnan, Mr. Deshpande, Mr. Kumar, and Dr. Rao for your valuable views and guidance. Thank you, Arjun, for moderating a lively panel discussion. For our next session, Arjun will be in conversation with a healthcare business technology expert, Mr. Michael Valiante, business leader, healthcare business and structured data solutions with Dell Technologies. Over to you, Arjun and Mr. Valiante.
Hello and welcome back. I'm Arjun Vishwanathan, and I am today in conversation with Michael Valiante, business leader, healthcare business for unstructured data at Dell Technologies. Michael, welcome. Delighted you could join us today.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you so very much. Michael, I'm going to directly jump into it, and I'm going to make the most of the time that you've given us, and we know you've got a busy schedule ahead. Michael, you just, and all of us just heard this fascinating conversation and the dialogue amongst industry leaders from both the pharma and the healthcare industries. But really, Michael, given your vantage point in the global ecosystem of sorts, where you have a near ringside view of the overall progression and evolution of the healthcare business with its inflection with technology, how are you seeing that evolution very, very differently from how it's been in the past, especially given the lessons of the last 7 months? Michael.
So I think one of the things that we're seeing, which is hugely rewarding to caregivers and patients alike, is improving the ability to collaborate, removing the obstacles of geography from collaboration. And that really does result in a series of improvements in efficiency and overall effectiveness of care delivery.
Outstanding, outstanding. Because I am going to come to a very, very different kind of a question. Really, is increasingly, and given the, again, I'm going to come to the lessons of the last 7 months. How do you see the future evolving with the inflection of technology in much greater measure? Considering that, I think if there's been one thing that's been established beyond measure, it is that technology is center point to healthcare and drug research and delivery of the future. How do you see that playing a very pivotal role?
So I think it dovetails with the statement about collaboration, and that is, the element of speed. And through the improving of collaboration and doing that more easily, more quickly, more effectively, I think that it really does allow for greater insights to be gained in the care protocols that are developed for treating patients, and it certainly provides a really large extension to the available information that can be then harnessed and utilized to develop those protocols. Because the access to information, and there are vast amounts of information in healthcare, the access to information for care providers, when it becomes to the point of being at their fingertips, and you can leverage technology to mine large repositories of data, you certainly can really think about what care pathway should be followed for an individual patient, and that really leads to greater personalized medicine.
I find that quite powerful, really, Michael, because you just spoke about the whole concept of information, and information is essentially an evolutionary journey of what you start with, which is data. But the whole concept of unstructured data perhaps hasn't gained as much maturity across a lot of global markets, as much as it perhaps should have been. Now, in keeping that as the background, Michael, what is your essential guidance to industry practitioners of IT and data on how they can, well, navigate what promises to be fairly a complex journey?
So I think what healthcare IT leaders are really looking at now is where else is there data, unstructured data that needs to be captured, managed, effectively shared as a part of the clinical record. What does the visual medical record look like? And if you think about elements of care in radiology and cardiology, we've done a great job of capturing that information, largely unstructured data. But there's also a tremendous amount of data outside of those departments being generated, and they range from photographs that are being taken for dermatologic care or wound care, or they may be images that are captured by a nursing staff in a med-surg floor for a medication allergy or bed sore or different type of topical concern, that they want to capture that image and make it part of the record so that care providers are assessing all the information that is available on that patient. They also range from things, if you see what's going on now, and this is actually over the last 7 months been becoming rather popular, is chest ultrasounds, using these handheld ultrasound devices now. And they are largely unstructured because they're not ordered exams. They're done as screening tools when someone enters the emergency room. Yet it's really valuable piece of information to have a look at the opacity in the lung to give an assessment, or to do a quick carotid artery review to give an assessment. And a lot of those images aren't being scheduled. They're done so easily and so quickly by the care provider that they're not scheduling an ultrasound, having it go to, ordering an ultrasound, then having it go to scheduling, getting scheduled, having somebody come down and perform that exam, because the tools are at their fingertips. And so needing to be able to capture that information is really important. And there's also video data there too, whether it's, gait studies or psychologic studies. This is all data that has been either newly generated or has been generated for some time, but just not managed as the overall patient record. So I really think the next step is looking at the overall enterprise and understanding what other data is being generated that, because it doesn't necessarily get ordered, that it's in turn being either stored in a silo or not stored at all. I mean, care providers are walking around with their cell phones. They've got a photo studio in their pocket, and what images are they capturing? And those images aren't, at least easily, and maybe not at all, being placed back in the patient's record.
Well, it's quite interesting, really, isn't it? Because well, we are living in what are, well, challenging yet very fascinating times if you look at it from the lens of technology by itself. Michael, I must ask you, given the learnings of the last 7 months, given what we have learned about technology and the whole concept of human capital, from the healthcare and pharma or pharmaceutical sectors, really, what are the levels of innovation? What are the new innovative model solutions and products that you're bringing out to the global market that's going to help healthcare providers as well as drug research and drug manufacturers in navigating this journey in a much more agile, scalable, and innovative fashion? Michael Valente.
So I think this all leads down the path of precision medicine and personalized care. So where I think technology is aiding caregivers and patients today is in the ability to capture, to deliver, and to manage a vast amount of data, some historical, some new, marry that together through easier interoperability. But at the end of the day, the goal is really to help enable the highest quality of care in the shortest time at the least cost. And there are a variety of facets for how you can do that. Is that economy of scale and how you manage data? Is that in high performance computing so that you can process these larger amounts of data more quickly and easily? Or is that providing new insights by being able to make available vast amounts of historical data that is of a similar nature or followed a similar protocol and understanding what the outcome was? There's a lot of facets to how you can improve the overall delivery of care and the patient and caregiver and staff satisfaction.
Because my real question to you, therefore, is given the levels of innovation that Dell Technologies are bringing at a global level, how, in your opinion, or in your guidance, would you look at the whole concept of decentralized analytics, enabling faster, intelligent, and real-time decision-making, Michael? Because at the end of the day, what the future looks like is a healthier planet, healthier nations, and healthier people, and healthcare for all. Michael, what's your view on that?
So I think we're doing several things, and what is happening for healthcare is really fantastic. And that is as we can break down the geographical barriers of access of information, you also open up the geographical opportunities for patients to participate in their care pathway, and for loved ones of patients to participate in the care pathway. And if you see what's going on with the ability to get patients released from the hospital sooner, but still have a very close eye on the status of their health and their well-being, you then to be able to extend the healthcare system to be thinking about and engaging patients in their care with their care providers before they fall ill, and to be able to monitor them and effectively watch them and consult with them after they have an episode of care. So I think you really begin to enhance the overall relationship between patients and care providers and subspecialists and family members and loved ones who can help with a patient's care and healthy well-being.
Interesting, because I do have a view on the clock, Michael, and I do know you got a hard stop, but I'm going to try and sneak in a couple of questions there. And therefore, given your experience, given the vast breadth of where you are sitting with your global vista, how do you think that the whole concept of unstructured data dealt with and managed effectively will power organizations, especially in the healthcare and the pharmaceutical sector, to greater resilience, to be more innovative? How do you see that playing out?
So the technologies that we've brought forward for unstructured data, the ability of, say, our PowerScale solutions to deal with the ever-growing amount of data and to ensure that as data scales, performance scales with it. And that's really important, because if we're going to be able to harness this data effectively, for it to be useful in the delivery of care, it has to be readily available. And when you mine data, healthcare speed is really important in healthcare. Indeed. Speed is really important to clinicians in delivering care. So the things that we're doing in unstructured data with our solutions and the range that we have of unstructured data storage solutions with our PowerScale and Isoline products ensure that as one scales out for our healthcare IT providers, it's easily scaled, it's easily managed. And for the care providers that then want to access that data, that they're ensured reliability and performance. And having all this healthcare data is great, but if you can't access it, or you can't access it in a reasonable amount of time, it becomes less valuable.
Absolutely, but that pretty much is what we have time for. But Michael, I'm going to sneak in one more question. The last 7 months have been fairly challenging, and to quite a few that I've been speaking to, fairly traumatic. What's been the one biggest learning, Michael? It could be personal, it could be professional, but one learning that's going to stay with you for a long time to come over the last 7 months, something that's hit you really effectively.
So I think one of the things that I've kind of noticed is, for a long time people say, oh, healthcare is, they're slow to adapt and adopt technology. There's all kinds of reasons why that is. But when forced with this situation requiring change, what I've seen is organizations and staff and people in all spectrums of the healthcare industry think about how to innovate and change. And this has happened in all the clinical departments. It's happened in pathology with the really exciting area in the digital transformation of pathology. And all of a sudden, adopting ways to evaluate whole slide images digitally, scan them and view them digitally, and then all of a sudden do that remotely without having to be in a central location where the slides are produced. So I think we've seen it there. We've seen it with a generation of patients who maybe would not be comfortable doing a televisit, that all of a sudden have now been forced to do a televisit, or maybe not forced, but found it better to do it, safer to do a televisit, have all of a sudden responded and said, well, boy, I'm sorry I wasn't doing that a long time ago. So I think we've seen it from care providers, from patients, from healthcare organizations, all of a sudden reacting to this change and then realizing, and maybe now even expanding, how technology can be leveraged to deliver higher quality, shorter times, and less cost.
Outstanding. Thank you so very much, Michael. That was nothing short of fascinating to hear your views. Extremely delighted and privileged to have you speak with us. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed it. I look forward to it.
Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, in the audience, I was in conversation with Michael Valente, business leader, healthcare business for unstructured data at Dell Technologies. Stay tuned. We'll be back with the next segment in just a moment.
That was a remarkably interesting conversation. Thank you, Mr. Valiante. Thank you, Arjun, for steering the conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, our next session is a keynote session titled Strategy in Action. This will be in the form of a presentation by Mr. Wolfgang Merz, CTO Healthcare, Life Sciences and HPC, Dell Technologies, Unstructured Data Solutions. Over to you, Mr. Merz.
Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for having me. My name is Wolfgang Merz, and I'm part of Dell Technologies Unstructured Data Solution team. I'm in a CTO role responsible for healthcare and life sciences. Just to explain this in a little bit more detail, my job is, to follow the industry, see what customers are doing, see what the trends are, and make sure those trends are supported by our products and solutions. Now, with that, we have heard a lot about data and the benefit of using data in healthcare in the previous session. And this is, why I'm now pointing out a couple of solutions we have for that. But the primary question I'm always trying to answer, and let's see if we can find an answer on this session today, is the question, is data the next generation doctors? Now, let's dig into this in a little bit more detail. Now, as I said, we've heard a lot about data, and I want to go into more details on this. Well, first of all, what we all experience on a daily basis is the fact that data is growing substantially in healthcare. And I'm not sure if you're aware of, but healthcare is definitely the industry with the biggest data growth of all the industry. If you would expect things like social media, Instagrams and likes having the biggest data growth, no, that's not. That's definitely healthcare. And so the IVCs and Gartners of this world do some investigation on the data growth on a regular basis. So in 2013, they predicted almost 50% data growth. The latest one, which came out a couple of weeks ago, is still saying that the data growth around 35%. So this is still substantial data growth, which of course uses some challenges, but as we discussed previously, also can have a lot of benefit. Now, let's look into where this data growth comes from. There's a big difference between the typical consumer data growth, like my images. Whenever I get a new phone or a new digital camera, it does have a higher resolution. We know from video, we know from television that resolution is growing. This is not so much true in the healthcare sector. And life science, same story. But what definitely changes, we are getting newer sources which are the main contributor to this big data growth. So the slide you see in front of us is showing those typical sources here. Now, there's three typical categories, the ones which I already would like to call traditional sources. And this is the one on the upper left-hand side. This is the sources for healthcare data, which is around for decades already. So there's things like radiology. There's electronic medical records, and a few more sources, which we have around for almost 20-30 years by now. Whenever radiology switched from film to digital, this is when these data sources occurred. However, there's emerging ones, there's new ones. We were confronted with a lot of data coming out of new sources. And so some of the big ones are digital pathology and clinical NGS, which I'm going to talk a little bit more detail in a few minutes. But there's another source which you see on the right-hand side of these emerging use cases, and that's IoT or sensor data. Well, that said, is IoT and sensor data is a couple of categories. First of all, there's obviously sensors which might be in the medical devices, but it's not what we refer to. We refer of those sensors which are with patient. Remote patient monitoring is one of the upcoming use cases. Elderly people being monitored from at home instead of hospitalized, and so on and so forth. There's a huge potential of data sources which we will see in the next couple of years. And on the upper right hand side, this is actually sources which are not just specific or typical for healthcare. You find them everywhere. It's from shooting videos in the operating theater for teaching purpose to video surveillance, stuff like this. But all that together, causes this enormous data growth. If we look into, where the challenges come from, well, some of those data sources have substantial volume, and like genome sequencing is big, like 800 megabyte per genome. The more traditional ones on the right hand side, the CTs or MRIs, big as well. But the new kid on the block is digital pathology. Digital pathology is an extremely growing source with a lot of data being generated per year. Now, this is what the previous discussion was about, the use of data. Well, the medicine has a term for it already, because they are shooting for getting this achieved for the last almost decade by now. And this is going to be the future of healthcare. We call it precision medicine or personalized medicine or stratified medicine, three terms which refer to the same thing. It's basically making healthcare, making treatment, making diagnosis more personalized, so better fitted to a single patient, because each and every individual is different. Now, that all said is, the way how that goes is use the data, use all this data to do this. On the left-hand side of this slide, you see the traditional sources, or the sources which are mainly used already today. It's clinical data, which includes EMR, which includes imaging. It's patient experience. It's one of those things which I was talking about that's coming in the future. It's lab data, genomics data, and so on and so forth. That's all data we try to already use to make the treatment of a single patient much better. But on the right-hand side of the slide, you see extra sources which may play a big role in the future as well, to achieve this goal, to have medicine, to have treatment, to have diagnosis customized for a single individual. That said is, what this is all about. Well, data, first of all, or in order to use data, you have to acquire data. Acquisition is the first step in this one. But the good news is now, because healthcare data is quite sensitive. It's extremely sensitive data. They had to already legally be compliant and store the data for quite some time. It very much depends on the countries worldwide, what the regulations are. Some countries, need to store data for 7 years, some even until 20 years after the death of a patient. So a lot of data has been acquired, and so far, everybody was complaining about the fact that this is cost, which you cannot get paid for. That's standard cost. But the good news is the data is mostly around. We just need to find it. We need to know what's around. But the data is already there because of legal compliance obligations, and this is why the data is there, and this is now why analysis has been done. When we entered the big data area, and by the way, the term big data has always been wrong. It's more about big data analysis, but like 10 years ago when this era started, the first attempts were made to use this data and do some analysis, draw conclusions, how we can use cohort data for patients, for the wealth of patients, and so on and so forth. But nowadays, machine learning is the name of the game. There's a lot of things going on in machine learning, and if we go into more details on this, well, I was talking about the first world record of healthcare, namely the fact that data or healthcare is the industry with the biggest data growth, and here comes the second one, because healthcare is the industry which definitely produces most tools or has research going on, has development going on to build tools based on artificial intelligence, well, mostly on machine learning, but in research also on deep learning. And this is going to be tools that will assist the doctors, the nurses, or any other personnel in hospitals and also in pharma, as we will see in a minute. So that said is, there's hundreds and thousands of those projects ongoing worldwide. I'm based out of Europe, and the European Union actually funds more than 300 to 400 of those projects alone to get those things done. So what's being used, this is just a very, very short list. Most of the stuff obviously is based on healthcare, on diagnosis. One of the first ones that ever was tried out with skin cancer detection. That's why I see it. What we see most today is tools being developed around digital pathology, and I will talk about one project in a second. So bear with me for that. But there's others, like on the bottom of the slide, you see emergency call center. And that was an interesting one, which I learned about in the conference. What happens here is there's an emergency call center of a hospital, and this emergency call center, when they do a call with a patient, they have a speech recognition algorithm running in parallel to this, not just, to do a transcript, but to have the algorithm look into the EMR or any other data of this patient and dig out everything that's important for this call and instruct the call center agent, to ask the right questions earlier. And as well know, in an emergency call center, time is money. Time means the chances for survival or giving help, is much better. And this is, why such an algorithm can help to speed this one up. So I referred to, that a lot of projects are doing about digital pathology. Well, let's quickly look into pathology and digital pathology. Well, the point is, pathology is still one of those departments, one of those disciplines, which is still analog. Most of the pathologists worldwide still use the optical microscopes, and depending on the country and the regions, a few of them are switching to a digital workflow. So what's the difference basically? Well, if you would say, well, we still have to prepare the glass slides, and then, the only difference is instead of looking through the microscope, doing a scanner, that's using a scanner and then look at the screen. That's of course the primary purpose. However, as I pointed out, with digital pathology, there is a lot of benefits out of this one. First of all, in times like these, where people, even doctors, not always can go to any place, you can actually easily transfer those digital images now to have a pathologist in a different location look at those kind of things, getting a second opinion or even the diagnosis. So that's one benefit. The real other benefit, and we're talking about artificial intelligence, is that there's a lot of work that or a lot of work in the workflows of pathologists can be sped up or assisted here. I mean, part of those jobs of a pathologist is, counting cells per square centimeter or finding cancer cells. And this is what a algorithm definitely can speed up, and assist the doctor, the pathologist, by doing this much quicker. Now, talking about much quicker, this helps to solve another worldwide problem. And that's the problem is that there's more studies to be done in pathologists, but the number of pathologists is going down dramatically. There's a shortage in pathologists, and this is actually, what those algorithms can definitely assist with to solve this problem. That said, a quick one, one of those projects where Dell had been deeply involved in this one, together with one of the leading scanner vendors, Huron, and a university in Canada. We co-developed, an algorithm that classifies slides and regions in tissues. and this is stored in barcodes and archived with all the slides. So whenever a pathologist gets a new tissue, the algorithm automatically can distinguish details here and compare this to other studies, and this would include even retrieving the EMR of this patient to assist with comparison and stuff like this. Stuff which definitely in an analog workflow is absolutely impossible. So that said, this was mostly healthcare. Now let's look a little bit into pharma. Well, AI in pharma is also extremely important, or the usage of data in pharma is also extremely important. We heard a lot of things. I mean, we could spend another 20 minutes on just, where data plays a big role. Let's just focus on AI. Well, once again, there's a huge amount of use cases, but one thing that counts most, when it comes to drug design or drug development, it's the time to market. I mean, for two reasons. Obviously, for the pharmaceutical company, it's important to get the drug out there quickly, because only then they can get the money back they invested in development. For the patient, obviously, the quicker a drug is on the market, and in the current COVID age, we definitely know what we're talking about. For example, for a vaccine for COVID, I mean, this is hopefully out in a year from now, which would be definitely the world record, because typically in the past, it took like half a decade almost, up to 10 years to develop a drug. And part of the problem is, there is a variation, or there's a lot of studies, real studies with patients involved in the whole thing for good reasons. Now, speeding this up, artificial intelligence can definitely help. And the way it helps, like in some of the pre-studies, those pre-studies can actually already be assisted or even completely done with AI-based algorithms. But definitely the second, for the stage 3 study, it's very important to get the right patients involved, the right people involved, and AI also can assist, to get the right patients selected for the study, and all that, of course, assists with speeding up this process. Last not least, another data source which so far we did not, I only mentioned, but we didn't talk about it, and that's genome sequencing. Well, I mean, everybody knows the genome is actually our binary building block, although the word binary is wrong, because it's 4 molecules which build the information. And the complete sequence, meaning the entire information for the human, get sequenced around 2000, so about 20 years ago, and at this time it was a 100 million project. Now, cost, as you can see, went dramatically down. The slide is not fully up to date because it shows about $1,000 in 2015, and now we're in 2020. The technology went further, and we are now at around 300. So we are in the cost of what an MRI costs. So basically, it makes sense to use it also in clinical praxis. And as you can see on the right-hand side, there's a huge amount of use cases. Cancer and cardiovascular are the most prominent ones, but there's more than this. What it helps basically, and this was also one of my eye-openers, when like almost 10 years ago, I read about a study, where a hospital together with a genomics research organization published a study about colorectal cancer in the last phase. And by looking into the genome, finding the right biomarkers, they could get from a mortality rate of 80% to a mortality rate to 20%, so healing 80% of the patients by modifying the chemotherapy according to the information they get from the genome. However, I mean, if you look into these details now, the question, and we discussed this in length in the previous session, is, which relevant data exists, where is it, am I authorized to access it, and what about anonymization eventually, for use in stuff. If you look into typical hospitals, and there's nobody to blame about this, but typically every department has their own complete silo infrastructure. So data lives in hundreds and thousands of silos worldwide, and access to this is really very difficult. That said, is what I'm very often involved, what I see happening all over the place is a consolidation, and a centralized kind of device, to make data access easier. And by the way, for those applications which have similar data formats like the PACS in the radiology or cardiology, we even see consolidation in central kind of logical archives, clinical archives, I prefer to call them. And that said is, this of course can only be done with working closely together with those ISVs, which we as Dell Technologies have a very close cooperation on a technical and relationship level to make sure all our products are certified for that. Now, speaking about products, because I was supposed to talk about a couple of solutions, well, we have a variety of use cases, from desktops to special monitors, but this is what I'm personally interested more in that kind of stuff. It's network service, it's storage and data protection, especially the storage is kind of a challenging one. We also have some ready solutions if there's some stuff which you never did before and don't know what hardware, what infrastructure is needed for that, but I talk about it. And one of the challenges, obviously, with data growing into the petabyte space, and I mentioned digital pathology, a hospital with like 500 beds is going to produce a petabyte of data per year. So in order to do this, storage is definitely and cost efficient, and performing storage is quite a challenge here. This is one of our products for that. It's called Isilon, or now PowerScale, which helps doing this in an efficient way. If you're more interested in more details, we are happy to discuss this with you offline as well. Important, of course, is, because we all pointed out that that data, healthcare data is extremely sensitive, being sure or making sure that data is protected, that access by the wrong people is denied, and data is securely stored and being available 7/24. That's definitely done by those kind of enterprise features. As I said, we do have bundles. So without going into any details on this one, there's a ready system for life sciences, which concludes all the components if you want to do genomics or other stuff in life science. There's also a ready solution for AI, which contains all the components from storage, as you can see, Isilon up there, the servers, the necessary GPUs, and also, the network switches, but also, the middleware, the bundles, which are necessary to do those algorithms. And that's all comes with those ones. Now, that all said, we also do have, or this was the infrastructure, but Dell Technologies has a couple of other companies, not only Dell EMC, which I'm part of, but there is a lot of intelligence, and contribution also to the healthcare market. So to finish that up, I started with the question, is data the next generation doctors? And the answer is, of course not. It would be great, but it's definitely not. Data is definitely something which assists everywhere in medicine, and also in pharma and life sciences, of course. It definitely enables new diagnostic and treatment methods. But obviously, and this is where we can assist, and this is where our daily basis, it creates new challenges for IT. And as I said, this is what we are here to help with. With that, thank you very much for your attention, and have a great day.
Thank you, Mr. Mertz. That was an amazing fact-filled presentation. I'm sure our webinar delegates will benefit immensely from the insights you have shared today. Ladies and gentlemen, we now come to the end of this special webinar episode, focusing on the healthcare and pharmaceutical sector changes driving adoption of technology. It's my privilege to sum up the key findings of the webinar for you today. The digital transformation, or the fourth industrial revolution, which are very recent information technology agenda. make many countries expect data to be a source of new economic value that will determine the success and failure of transformative initiatives in the future. For enhancing the use of these unstructured medical big data, healthcare providers and pharmaceutical companies need to establish data collection, anonymization, and quality assurance processes. It is apparent that stores of big data owned by pharmaceutical companies can be used to develop helpful machine learning models for improving pharmaceutical business operations. Though marketing is the clearest business area where enterprise data is being leveraged, pharma companies can utilize their granular medical data for the purpose of clinical trials and drug discovery as well. With those words, ladies and gentlemen, I bid you goodbye for now. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you for attending. Do fill out the feedback forms as you exit the webinar platform. This will help us improve the events and webinars we bring to you in future. Until next time, this is Ushma Tyagi signing off on behalf of Dell Technologies and Strategic Solutions.